Thanks so much for clicking on this. This is going to be another episode of the Reforge Roundtable with a lead story about God of War Ragnarok news, centering around the new trailer as well as the dialogue about if the game was held back. After we talk about that, we have other things to discuss as well with Gotham Knights and New World, but we are going to kick things off with the God of War Ragnarok lead. I'm going to end the previous stream. It was a Scorn gameplay stream, and I'm going to bring everybody over from that. Thank you guys so much. If you enjoy gameplay streams and talk shows, be sure to hit subscribe and the bell button here on Reforge Gaming. If you're listening to the Reforge Roundtable elsewhere, you can always catch us live over there at Reforge Gaming on YouTube. I'm joined, as always, when we're all available. We're all here this week. Ginger Prime and 30 and So Gaming are here with me. How are you doing, guys?
What's going on?
I'm doing good, dude. How you been?
I am great, and the weather's been, well, the weather's great, but then everybody has allergies, so, you know, that's...
My allergies today, dude. I'm like, I just put my mask down and be like, let's go. So my eyes are all, like, red.
Yeah. My son looks like he has black eyes, because, like, from gets, like, puffy from the allergies.
Looks he's playing video games way too long. That's basically what happens. It's like rubbing his eyes and stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the other thing going on this time of the year is the weather's not just changing, but the tide seems to be changing. We're getting into a gaming news deluge. There's things coming out. There's things getting announced. I was just playing Scorn, like that just came out, and we're starting to get a little bit more about God of War Ragnarok, and we had that big story trailer. And then this week, just yesterday, they released a very short trailer about Next Gen Immersion. And they highlighted the fact that it's going to be at 4K. Now, they haven't given details because God of War 2018 got like a 4K checkerboard upgrade with 60 FPS. We're not quite sure how they're going to be doing 4K in this one. Probably very similar. And then it talked about the 3D audio and the haptic feedback, just sort of showcasing, hey, this is the next-gen stuff we're adding. And I wanted to kick off with that because I do think some people are going to want to see maybe a bit more than that, like we did with Horizon Forbidden West. We are still waiting on that PlayStation showcase. And guys, as a reminder, anybody who just came from the previous stream, do us a favor. We need that like button slammed. This is like our fourth stream of the day, actually. We've done a lot of streams today, so thanks everybody who's been doing that. Make sure and faithfully do that and remind people when they come in. So I wanted to discuss this with you guys because it's a common discussion now with these sequels and with Next Gen. I was even debating people about the DeadSpace Remake, like, certain things not looking Next Gen. We're probably going to get into that when we talk Gotham as well. But with respect to God of War, do you feel like at this point they need to establish more firmly what exactly the details will be of the Next Gen version on PS5, upticking it from the previous one that you can get right now in 2018. We'll start with 30. This is a transitional time, and there are games that are hitting what I feel like is a true next-gen experience. I think we saw that in Horizon Forbidden West, but they also detailed all that before the game even came out. Is that something that you're looking for in the dialogue right now? And if not, what do you need to see when something like this is priced at $70 on a next-gen console?
I look at God of War. I know everyone's like, it's a DLC, right? And this is the same. This is the same talk that they did for Miles Morales when it came out for Spider-Man. I think in the same gist, right? Because they were in between systems and whatnot, they were creating these games for the 4 and then the 5. And then what was happening is they didn't have any games for the 5. And they said, well, the next games are only coming out for the PlayStation. Remember when Miles Morales came out? They said they're only having it for PlayStation 5. And then all of a sudden it came out for 4 as well, right? They wanted to boost up the sales for the 5. I don't believe that Miles Morales, not for 1 second, or God of War was made solely just for PlayStation 5. It was made for the 4 and then also the 5. Now, Ratchet and Clank, that was 100% made for the 5 with the haptic feedback and everything that they did for that system. So when people looked at Miles Morales and said it was a DLC, I could see how they're like, all right, well, because when you play Spider-Man, you're like, oh, this is leading up into there should have been a DLC. But then they said, you know what? We have no games for the PlayStation 5, so why don't we take Miles Morales, put a little bit more story in there, and send it out. Fantastic game, And I wouldn't consider it as a DLC. I would consider it as a smaller game, but a really great game for the PlayStation 5 and 4. And I think that's where God of War's at. I think because they're using the same assets. I mean, what are they going to make brand new assets? No, they just had it in 2018, and they started production of God of War 2, I think in November, like just 1 month or 2 months after the game came out in 2018. So obviously the game is going to be linear or so close to what the last one was, because that's what they're doing. It's a continuation to what it is. So for people to look at it and go, well, it's 5 years now and I want like the best of the best. God of War, I played on the PlayStation 4. It's phenomenal looking, right? On the PlayStation 4. The only reason I'm not getting God of War Ragnarok this year is because I don't own a PlayStation 5. I refuse now because the graphics of like Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon Forbidden West, now God of War. I don't want to play it on the inferior product of the 4, right? I play it on the 5. So I'll get it down the line and play it once PlayStation 5s are abundance again and we can all get them and whatnot. But I don't think in any way, shape, or form that this game needs to do anything different because it's made for the 4 and the 5. And sure, they can have the haptic feedback and whatnot for that next gen console to separate itself from the 4 because they have to make sales of that. But as visual and gameplay and all that other stuff, they could literally just continue doing what they did for 2018, in my opinion, and it's going to sell, and it's still going to be a great game. It's still, in my opinion, going to be, obviously nominated for Game of the Year, one of the Game of the Year's nominations. So I don't think they have to do anything. I think they could just do exactly what they're doing, make a product, make a really good single player experience, and we just have to stop nitpicking for this. Say $60, $70. Look, people have been playing games now for the last decade and paying $120 for the gold edition, legendary edition, whatever edition, diamond edition, and you're already paying $100 for a game. You're just okay with because it came with a statue or it came with the cosmetic skin that you threw away in 3 seconds when you started the game. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Ginger? Because I mean, the discussion does sometimes center around next gen doesn't look different enough. You know, what would you think they need to do to maybe turn the tide of that, or what do you think about that dialogue in general?
Well, I think Sony blew their load when they announced the PS5 and they completely mismanaged this launch of the PlayStation itself. They've set an entire generation of fanboys rabid without essentially the tools necessary to understand the complexities of game design, and allowed Microsoft a foothold both in Japan and within what it means to be a next generation console. I don't care that they don't have game design for Ragnarok that is PS5. You have not seen that yet, based off of how they marketed it. And it was all in their mistake of saying, we believe in generations, and then going, oh, wait.
Yeah.
And that's where I lost a lot of respect for Sony as a concept, because that clearly showed that they got checked, whatever we want to call it. They got caught off guard, and you can clearly see that in its core game design and its core marketing, where we believe in generations, which as a gamer, when I heard them say that, I go, that's stupid, but I'm so glad that they're going to do this so it can show a clear contrast to that. If you say we believe in generations and this was all PS5 forward, it would give game designers the ability to understand and design games, which is what we've been promised and what we're seeing very, very little of, because it turns out you want to be able to make sales of games. And the best way to do that is with a cross-generational approach. Now, there's not, there's definitely arguments against the cross-generational, but Microsoft, I think, really clearly took the bag with essentially how Play Anywhere kind of works in their smart delivery. Like, if you're going to talk about a next generation feature, it's clearly that overposed to, like, you want to add haptic feedback. Cool. I would love, for them to design like any game with the PS5 only in mind. But what 30 said is absolutely right when it comes down to Miles Morales and being able to put these games on multiple platforms. There are some sacrifices that are being made, namely one in terms of what they said and how they do hallways. You're going to keep seeing that because you have to do hallways on the PlayStation. Could they completely redesign it and have a PS5? The question ends up becoming what I don't see a lot of gamers talking about is that even fun? Is it fun to have 10,000 players all at the same time in an online game? We have no idea. Hasn't been able to be technical. Doesn't mean it's going to be fun if it's achieved. So I think ultimately they're doing the right thing. Sony's making the right decisions, and because there's also this weird non-console console cloud streaming, all this, acquisition war going on. What's better for Sony right now, to release a game that only runs on PS5s, where a good part of the population can't still get a PS5 and they're not going to bring it to PC for quite a little bit, or to release a game and make a crazy ton of money and then release an enhanced edition and they can make a crazy ton of money and then eventually release it on PlayStation, PC, and get a crazy ton of money. I think it all kind of harkens back. Everything that they do that isn't PS5 centric, designed for the PS5 at its core in mind, is always going to have that feel. And I'm not going to blame them for it. I'm going to blame their marketing team when they announced the PlayStation 5, because they mismarketed it and they made a mistake. And they're going to pay for that mistake a little bit. Not like it's not going to be the thing that puts them into second place, but it's going to be the mistake that comes back each and every time you see any high profile game from them. I have a lot of respect for Sony, but when they did that, and when they have been walking it back this whole generation, I think it's clear that they were like, oh man, like we gave Microsoft a way to kind of embarrass us each and every big release.
I'm so glad you took that position, because I 100% disagree with you.
That's fine.
So we'll actually have a disagreement on the podcast, which is rare. I went and read the interview with the We Believe in Generations thing, and I think a lot of it got ripped out of context, because even in that interview, he talked about how they were going to have to continue to support the PS4 for a time. Like you kind of have to take it in context. Like in that interview, he establishes that there will be a continued delivery of games to PS4 for a while. Like he even mentions, like, we had, at the time he did the interview, I think it was like 115 million PS4s in circulation, and he made the point, it's like, we can't just immediately turn our back on these people, right? So I think too many people maybe rip that. I actually, even if you read the interview, it gets interpreted by the journalist as meaning, oh, that means we're going forward with just PS5, and it's like, that's not really what he said. And we're going to get a whopping 2 games that are first-party cross-gen, Horizon and God of War. That's it. After this, Spider-Man is officially announced as, like, that's the first one. They are leaving behind PS4. So I think they've handled the cross-generational divide very well, especially with how well, God of War and Horizon did. It makes sense to say, hey, all those PS4 users are really going to want to be able to buy the sequel, and the demand problems they've had, supply problems they've had with PS5. And the other thing we have to consider is what Mike said. Mike's right. I mean, when they started designing God of War, they were using the 2018 engine and assets, because that game was ahead of its time to a certain degree. There was an article about how Sony developers were begging Sony to let them put games on PC because that PS4 was holding a lot of those games back. If you look at God of War and Days Gone as examples, it's very clear these games were well ahead of what those consoles could do. So yeah, I actually disagree. I don't think they've mishandled the way that this generation launched. I do think expectations got vastly shattered by all of the supply problems, which nobody could foresee. I don't think Microsoft or Sony could have had their marketing.
Not.
I don't think their marketing could have been like, we might run into a massive global shortage of chips. These 2 titles were always going to be cross-gen. I think. I don't see Horizon and God of War being just like, oh, these are going to be PS5. I definitely think they wanted to have these ready to move the PS5, because they went through their own delays, because the voice actor Christopher Judge had a back injury, and that pushed God of War back quite a bit. And then Horizon, I think even internally with working from home and all that, its timelines got pushed back. So I don't feel the same way about this.
It would have been absolutely terrible if PlayStation, they also restocked the old systems too, right? I think they put another 10 million in circulation or something like that when the whole thing was going on. But if God of War was just on PlayStation, let's just say it was on PlayStation 4, right? And they weren't bringing it to PlayStation 5 yet, right? Well, sales for like their first party titles, when they first come out, they're like 5 million, 8 million. Out of 116 million people that own a PlayStation, you're only getting 5 to 8 million. Well, now half of the player base, because the people that bought the PlayStation 5 are the diehards, right? They want the first party titles. Well, if they move over to the PlayStation 5 and they're like, oh yeah, God of War is not on PlayStation 5, it's on PlayStation 4. At least half of your 5 to 8 million people that bought it day one are going to be on the new platform that can't buy it, and they're not going to buy it for the old system because either they traded it in or, you know what I mean? So they're like, we got to make it for the old people because there's still about half of the people, because it takes about 2 to 3 years for people to start switching over to the next generation console. That's always been the thing. When the new Nintendo came out, or the new Genesis came out, or the new whatever came out, it takes about 2 to 3 years to people to move over to the next gen console. And then even after that, majority of that is then waiting 5 years, 6 years before they buy the next system, right? So
yeah, when you talk about early adopters, etc., I see chat. I think the impression that I'm getting from chat is that I'm saying that they were going to abandon PS4 or that they were going to stop supporting PS4, and not saying that at all by any means. But what I am saying, as part of the evidence that I present to make my points, like I feel like my points are valid, are that, okay, go ahead and upgrade your PS4 game on your PS5. Tell me how many steps it takes. Tell me how much work it has to be and why that becomes a news story every time something like this happens. Yeah, God of War design. They didn't even probably have the full specs for the PS5. That's why I said it doesn't concern me whatsoever. But when they do sit down to design a PS5 game, first and foremost, that's what makes me excited. Like, that's where, when it comes down to it, that's where I'm very interested to see game design wise that's going to happen. But I still stand by what, like, Sony, regardless of how it was interpreted, the expectations end up being that people are going to look at God of War on a PS5 and they're going to say, this doesn't feel next gen enough. Whose fault is that? I mean, the gamer who's sitting here setting the expectations, but Sony, I think, misaligned that. They set this expectation. Even Lono, in his disagreement of me, which sounded more like we're in agreement on a lot of things, admits that he doesn't know if it was announced. Like, did they even say? They just announced God of War. They weren't saying anything. And then the internet went crazy with its own speculation. And thus, there are going to be people who buy the game on PS5 and they're going to feel like it's not a PS5 game. So that's, to my point, that's where I feel like I'm making my points are valid based off of that. You know, that's how it's going to play out. The fact that they've already labeled this the DLC, like, it in and of itself is like, that ties back to that quote of them talking about generations. And I think that could have been much better handled. And that's where they gave Microsoft an edge, because every time one of these stories comes out, like, you look at Microsoft's like, we got smart delivery. We've already figured out. You just buy the game. It's not mattering of whether there's a 4 or a 3 or Microsoft's dumbass naming system with an X or a Y or a C, like whatever. Like, it just handles it for you. And I do hope that Sony gets into that aspect where you can purchase that game, et cetera, and it can work across. Because, like, to the point, like, will there be a Halo game that only is Xbox Series X compatible? Maybe they drop the Series, B or whatever, the Series S, but it's like, yeah, at some point, like, and that's the natural aspect of it. But when you have a history, like we have a history, I remember a clear difference between this SNES and the N64. I don't think gamers are going to experience that kind of jump in terms of video game fidelity, at least until we start getting into quantum computing, or something like that. And that's just not, like, the jumps are going to be more gradual, and it ends up being driven into services, and it ends up being into how does it work together. One of the things that I think my PS5 controller works on PS4, correct? I think that's one thing that I think Sony, it does not. PS4 works on PS5.
I don't think either.
I have no idea.
I don't think either do that, because I remember asking, like, can I play co-op games? I didn't have 2 DualSenses yet, and I had an extra PS4 controller, and people were like, no, it's not compatible, because they might have been wrong, but that's what I was told. People were like, no, it's not compatible. You can't go through, you can't go forward or backwards with them.
Okay, that's a bummer. I thought there was that. I guess that works on PC. Again, PC's the better place to play, guys. Come on.
I'm struggling to understand. I'm not grappling with your position very well. This might be my fault.
Okay.
You said they labeled it as DLC. Who labeled God of War Ragnarok as DLC?
They, like, the internet trolls?
Yeah, the community.
You were saying they.
Community.
You said they, and it sounded like you were referring to Sony. I was like, what in the world? Okay.
No.
So the second question I have.
Hopefully be clear is that, like, internet, they, Sony.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now my second point of clarification. So when you're faulting Sony for saying we believe in generations, so you think people
and then clawing it back.
Where did they
clawing it back?
Where did they claw it
back with the launch of the PS5. Literally, like, just like where Microsoft and the Xbox One, like, oh, we're gonna have always online, and then they clawed that back, like, after like a month. Like, Sony, after they did that announcement leading up to the PS5, all of a sudden you start seeing things being like, oh, and we're also gonna bring that to PlayStation 4. Like, all of a sudden it was like, this is launching, and then they started bringing it back. And that's essentially the story of the last 2 years for
But
them.
I
And
don't understand. That's not a clawback, because they literally, in the very interview you're taking the quote from, he said they were going to continue to support the PS4 with games. That doesn't make any sense. To interpret that as a clawback doesn't make any sense, because he says in that interview, we're going to continue to have games on PS4. It's not, when you rip it out of context, sure, and you headline hunt. That's what a lot of the people did. A lot of YouTubers.
Right, but I'm not. No. I'm not ripping out of context. Like, essentially, where they said, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to put on the system. And then, we're going to also, it's saying that something's going to be something on the PlayStation 5, and that's what you're going to sell it off of. And then 3 months later, go and say, okay, we're going to go ahead and bring this to the PS4. That isn't, I wouldn't classify that as we're going to continue to support the PS4 and fall under that label. I would say, like, we need to go ahead and do this. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I call that a clawback for sure. But them continuing to make games for PlayStation 4 isn't also a contradiction to them saying we believe in generations, because they continue and have continued to support the PS3 for years after. So is like Nintendo. Like, you have this aspect. Believing in generations is the statement when I watch these events and how I watch the launch unfold, them then going and realizing, oh man, like, I think probably maybe it's in part of the hardware shortage, but them ultimately coming and saying, like, okay, yes, we're going to start bringing some of these things and making sure that they're across, where originally that didn't sound like that was their plan. And maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but like, I've seen, like, and I would say, like, from when they announced that aspect to before even the launch, all of a sudden some of that conversation got soft. There also was a leadership changeover right at that same time.
Right, but the interview in question with Jim Ryan, when he says we believe in generations, when he goes into the specifics of what they're going to be doing, he actually does make it clear they'll continue to launch things on PS4. So the statement we believe in generations there's no specificity there. It doesn't say anything. It just says we believe in generations, right. And then he talks about what the generational shift will look like, which would include cross-generationally supported games.
Right, but the specification of them just saying, like, this is PS5, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now it's also PS4. That doesn't contradict
now you're misquoting the interview. That's not what he said. He doesn't say that.
I'm not quoting the interview. I'm quoting what when we watched them do the announcement and then them walk through it, and then over the course of the next 6 months.
So there's an announcement where they said that everything would be PS5.
Yeah, when they announced, no, not that they said everything would be PS5. I'm not saying that they said everything will be PS5. No, I'm saying that. Go ahead.
They did say a couple of games were going to be just play. I mean, because they were selling the PlayStation 5, right? So the initial announcement, they did say, like, Miles Morales, they did say was only PlayStation 5, and then,
is
like,
it on
2 weeks
PS4
later,
now?
And then 2 weeks later, they did come back on that and say it's on PlayStation 4, but they did hype it up on PlayStation 5.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with
That is exactly has everything to do with.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's saying.
That has nothing to do with we believe in generations, because that interview had nothing to do with that. That had already happened. The Miles Morales thing had already happened.
I don't know about the interview, but what I'm saying is they did say officially that game was only for that system, and then they came back, and because I remember having podcasts about it. I was like that game's coming out on PlayStation 4 100%. I was like, because there's not going to be enough people buying it on the PlayStation 5. All their fans are on PlayStation 4 still. I was like, they're going to put it on PlayStation 4, and then a couple weeks later they did announce they're like, oh, and it's coming to PlayStation 4. But they wanted to see how many people were going to go buy a PlayStation 5 but then we had the supply issues, then we had the coup, then we had all this other stuff happen. So
you also have leadership change, like you have leadership changeover. So it's like there's a lot of things that happen within just the span of 6 months from them announcing it to them also looking at, like, wait a minute. And I'm not talking about the technology. Like game design. I hope that for PlayStation, for Xbox, we can get to a point where that hardware spec is raised. And that's where I think a lot of people will actually see what they're hoping for. But there's no way a PS5 game right now that's been in development for any period of time is going to be really fully taking advantage of that. Just same thing way what you see right now, especially within PlayStation. One of the things, like, to praise them for something they do. Look at Ghost of Tsushima. Look at some of the games that come out at the end of the life cycle of the PlayStation that push the 4 to unimaginable limits. PS5 won't be fully realized. So for those who are looking for that really next gen experience, interestingly enough, it comes towards the end of the next gen experience when all of a sudden they start talking about the PS6. That's where you're going to see that. But 30's right. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like when them saying like this is PS5. I'm not saying or that we believe in generations means we're cutting off PS4. No, by all means. I'm not saying they're wrong for bringing Miles Morales to the PS4. What I'm saying is that you can see a clear run up. And one of the things and why I call it a clawback is that when they say that this is PS5, this is for you guys on the PS5. And then it's the same thing with Final Fantasy 16. Like and it'll be interesting. Will it come out to PC day and date, or do they lock that down to PS5? It's great that it's PS5. There's even rumors that it's coming to PS4. I personally hope that it does not come to PS4, that it's PS5 and up, because that's going to help them in their game design. But when they say, hey, it's PS5, and then whatever period of time, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 2 months, and then it's like, oh yeah, and here it is on PS4. Like, just be honest with people, and even if it's a timed exclusive to PS5, that's fine. But I call that a clawback. That's how I view it, and it's the right call. But it's like I wish that they were more or less like, no, that's fucking PS5. If they were going to sit here and say that.
Yeah, Eugene saying he just watched the Miles announcement. It doesn't say anything about PS5 only. I think we're getting lost in the weeds there because I don't remember that either. I remember them saying, oh, hey, it's going to be available on PS4 now, because originally the marketing only had PS5 emblazoned on it, but I don't think it said PS5 only.
And it's probably a marketing issue.
Maybe I'm on edge because every time I hear people frame this, they frame it as if Jim Ryan lied. They weren't honest when the market shifted on them, and they
had to change.
And they had to change, because I know Gran Turismo did change as well. They were originally, that was going to be a PS5 exclusive. There's like a trailer that says that, and then they had to walk that one back, right? But when we frame it as they walked it back, or they misled the community, or they're dishonest, I'm always like, well, hey, wait, hang on a second. The very interview that We Believe in Generations came from established a continuation of cross-generational support. And if we're not going to allow for supply chain issues to allow a company to adjust its marketing, and I'm having trouble drawing a straight line between it is true that things did come out and then suddenly were on PS4, the two games that we consider Miles and GT. I'm having trouble drawing a straight line between that and why people are going to feel like God of War Ragnarok is not next gen. I'm not seeing the logic connection there.
Well, because they're like, it is, I mean, it's from a 4K, etc. I think a lot of people have expectations. So to answer that question, this isn't a Sony thing. This is a gamer thing. People are going to have expectations that aren't even practical. Like, the question is what does next gen then mean? And everybody will have 1,000 different definitions. So you'll end up seeing people chasing clout or trying to get attention or be upset because it didn't do whatever. One of the things we know it won't, because it was designed to be able to be cross-gen, is the fact that, like, when they show off loading screens, like, one of the things that Sony has, especially, it's like insane fast hard drives, right? From a game design perspective, like when you start thinking about all the hallways you would walk through in PS4 and 360 and PS3 games, like, that's to mask all the loading that's going on behind the scenes. But then they show it off with Ratchet and Clank, and boom, like, when you just rift through things and all of a sudden you're in the next level, like, that gives them so much power and so much ability. Like, what would a God of War look like if that had that technology? So you wonder if somebody's going to sit here and start to have that. Now, the question that I would ask to you guys then is that, do you see a DLC that is Ragnarok PS5 only that would then be able to take advantage of that core design?
I don't. Go ahead, 30.
No, you go, because you've been quiet.
I will say no, because, and this is one of the debates we've been in a lot. It was like, was Ragnarok held back? And I've always said it could have only been held back if we weren't getting it when we're getting it. Like, if they were going to build it for PS5 only, we wouldn't get it for another 2 years, because they would have had to hold back development. They would have had to wait to start building it because the dev kits weren't out. Right. Given that, the reason I'm saying that is that's the context for the entire, like, sort of like architecture and foundation of the game then is they took the 2018 assets and engine. They even said when they ported the game to PC, when they ported God of War 2018 to PC, there was an interview where this lady said, we actually changed some of our pipelines and development structure for Ragnarok. They learned some things when they brought it to PC, which that when we read that, we were like, oh man, Sony's ramping up for PC ports because they made changes in Ragnarok because of the 2018 PC port. So all of that sets the stage in my mind for the architecture and foundation of this game won't really allow for that. You're not going to be like, oh, there's a DLC for Ragnarok, and it does something that you can only do on the PS5. Like, I think the thing they're going to drive with Ragnarok is 4K, haptic feedback, 3D audio, 60 FPS, and they may go into details about lighting. They did that with Horizon Forbidden West. The cinematic lighting that they use in the cutscenes, they use in the entire game when you play it on PS5. So Forbidden West got that extra bump. So typically, I think most people are looking for next gen right now. At least this is what I'm doing based on the marketing. Load times, resolution, frame rate, and lighting. Those are like the four things. Let's throw in audio because
what's the priority? Because like I would say like my highest priority that I value on a next gen is frame rate and over resolution. Like give me that smooth frame rate, whether it's 60, but don't let it dip below that. And then essentially, like, I don't care if the resolution is dynamic resolution, like keep that frame rate locked. And then, I think you hit the nail on the head. The other thing I would say in terms of it, the one thing I'd add just based off of the games that I generally spend more time with is internet and connectivity. Like how is its social features where you could say like, Death Stranding with this asynchronous multiplayer side of things, like being able to integrate different things like that. But that's obviously wouldn't make sense in every single game possible. But I do look at that as a next gen feature as these systems get more powerful and allow for whether it's social or not, it doesn't necessarily matter.
Yeah. Real quick.
I want 30 to weigh in on the question.
I just want to bring up two things, right? June 11th of 2020, I found two articles. One is from The Gamer that says that Spider-Man Miles Morales will be launching on PlayStation 5 exclusive before the end of 2020. And then CNN Business also said that Sony confirmed that CNN Business that Spider-Man Miles Morales will be a PlayStation 5 exclusive. This is 100%. This is 100% what they said when it came out, when they announced it, right? Now, I don't know if it was from the press conference of the Sony thing or whatever, but the media that gets out to people said Miles Morales, PlayStation 5 exclusive. And people read these things, and then that's how it goes out. Now, I don't know, pick and choose what you want, but it was said, it was official that they said it was a PlayStation 5 exclusive. As far as the God of War, if they made it just a PlayStation 5 exclusive, they would have to do exactly what Lono said, where they would have to delay it because just like Ratchet and Clank, it was literally built on the technology of what the system was. And if God of War was going to do that, then you're not going to see God of War Ragnarok for 2 more years, right? Because that's so there's no way it was made for PlayStation 5. Now, if all the moons align and we didn't have the 2 years of everyone stay in your house and the supply chains and everything else, we could have a completely different story, but we're not fortune tellers and, time travelers.
Well, they couldn't. I want to be clear. Like, I'm not faulting them for changing overall. Like, they needed to. I think essentially what happened is that beyond the pandemic, that's why competition's also good. You start seeing like, hey, Microsoft's doing this thing over here, people kind of memeing on it, and then all of a sudden it's like, that's actually not a bad strategy, especially in that gap. We're still going to support PS4, so them bringing those games back, I think is the right call. But that's where I label that. But 30, onto the question though of Ragnarok having some kind of DLC a couple years from now or whatever that is only PS5. Like, when do we start getting to that point where like it makes more sense to say like this is PS5 forward?
I don't think you could for DLC. If it was a different game, like if it wasn't Ragnarok and it was like a PvP game or something along the lines of that, and then they came out with an expansion to that PvP game, they could say this point forward, hey, who did that? I think Bungie did that with their game. We're like, we're not supporting this game on this system anymore, and they just moved to the next system, right? Because of that. So if it was a game that was multiplayer, sure, a single player, then drop DLC. I don't see that happening. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, but I don't see that happening where all of a sudden you buy the game on PlayStation 4 and then all of a sudden they say, oh, DLC is coming out and it's only on PlayStation 5. That, I think, would be held for the next God of War game, whatever that is, God of War 3. Then they say, hey, it's only on the next gen, right? And then you can't buy the next game until you get the next console.
Yeah, the Spider-Man 2 is supposed to be that turn. That's the hinge turn, is no more PS4, and the ramp up and the first quarter of next year is supposed to really, really help get PS5s out there. They're even a little bit easier to snag now with the bundles that are coming out. There was a Ragnarok bundle. There's a Call of Duty bundle that you can snag, and that's been helping people get them. When I got my second one, I got in queue for a Horizon Forbidden West bundle, and that's how I got it, because there's people that don't want the bundles and they'll avoid them because they see that extra $50 and they're like, oh, I'm not going to want it. So it's a little bit easier to snag them. So I do think that this is the hinge turn. Now, Ginger touched on it. I don't know if we're going to see games on the PS5 that, let's say in 3 or 4 years, Wolverine finally launches by Insomniac. Are we going to be able to look? Are we going to be able to look at Wolverine and say this is so much better than Ragnarok? Is there going to be a noticeable chasm of difference? Because my contention has been that these systems are already getting tapped pretty heavily. Like, I think Ragnarok and Forbidden West are going to take things very close to the ceiling. Now, I think there's features and bells and whistles they'll start to add in to these games on PS5. But if you look at the Spider-Man port to PC, when they tried to add like ray tracing and 4K and all this stuff, you have to have an insanely strong computer to run the Spider-Man port with all those bells and whistles, which to me states those are computers that are stronger than the PS5, and they're struggling to throw all that great stuff in. I'm curious, what do you guys think? Do you think there's this theory that we haven't really tapped the full power of these consoles? I'm like, I think we're pretty doggone close, if I'm honest.
I would fall under, I don't think we've fully tapped the power. We're PS5, Xbox Series X4, I think we've tapped PS4. Like, I think we know that system.
Sure.
The reason I would argue this is that while I'm somebody, like, I believe in player choice. That's what chat was asking me, like, why do I would attack Xbox, fanboys just as hard as I attack PlayStation fanboys, because I believe in player choice. Like, play where you want, right? Like, that's what my mantra. But I understand the counter arguments. When it comes down to the power, though, of the console, I think consoles do two things really well. One is they give you a fair entry price and a product that I think is pretty, is decent, right? If you want a premier experience, you're going to be spending, that's where it goes from $500 to thousands of dollars to have a PC that can really deliver what I feel a console does on a budget. The other thing a console does, though, is it has within its components, from a game design perspective, it makes it so much easier to design for the hardware, as opposed to when you level it up to PC, you have so many wider ranges of specs, right? So Sony bringing Spider-Man to the PC, all of a sudden it's like, what's our min spec that we want to support and what's our max spec? You end up having a lot more variability, which can be a challenge. And so if I say, I just want you to focus in on this, and here are all here's the limits. In a way, art can be made beautiful by those restrictions and those limits, and you find unique and interesting ways to tackle them. All of a sudden you remove those limits and it actually can pose a lot of challenges. So I think when it comes to PS5 and Series X, I think one of the things that we really have yet to see is that what is that design forward? And then the real question really isn't, is it, going to be worth it? It's like, is it even going to be fun? When you all of a sudden can sit here and stop loading hallways, and you could have like that, Ratchet and Clank experience where it's like, whatever that ends up looking like, because this is a very ethereal, what I'm talking about, whatever that ends up looking like, then the question is, was that even fun?
Right.
What was that even fun? Because if it's not fun, then it's not going to make it. But all of a sudden, is there going to be that inflection point? I saw Chad also sounding off about that as well, that all of a sudden you're like, I can't see games actually going backwards. When a game doesn't have this and it doesn't do this, then I'm just not interested. Otherwise, all we're going to see within generations ends up just being better frame rate, faster load times, and then you're looking at more service-driven model at that point within gaming. Anyway, that's my thought.
I saw someone say about Cyberpunk 2077 that they were doing that, I guess, with the DLC. Well, Cyberpunk 2077 had no business being on the old gen consoles. Okay? So
clearly
had no they did that for money grab or whatnot. And this is not me hating on CD Projekt Red. It's just that's what they did. I warned people. I said, do not get this game for the old system. I said, you have to get a new system to play that game. Another thing, as far as the supply chain and stuff, did we hit the tap, or not the supply chain, but did we hit the top of the systems? I don't think so. I think with Epic's Unreal Engine, Unreal Engine 5, what they're doing with that engine and what these games look like, I think they could take if we're at the top, Lono, I think this Unreal Engine 5 brings it back down to give them more leeway to do more things and to make games better, right? Like the technology of what Unreal's doing, I think it's uncanny of what they can do, right? So I think as far as with the Unreal Engine 5, it could potentially get a lot more out of these systems. I mean, hence why Witcher and Cyberpunk, they're all switching engines, and then Splitgate, their developer, they're decided that the day before they decided to switch. So a lot of these game companies or developers are switching to the Unreal Engine 5. You have talks of Halo even switching to Halo. I mean, to Unreal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot going on.
That's insane. If if they do that, that would be. Yeah. My mind would be blown. Because anyway, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, I don't think we're at the top of these things. I think there are games that are at the top because of their engine. They're limited by the engine itself. But I think other games are like, holy Christ! Did you see what we can do with this? We can get, and I don't know, dev talk. Like, well, we can get this megapixels or whatever out more or whatever, these voxels or whatever, and there'll be more leeway for them to do stuff. So I think we're still a good 5-6 years with this system, and then obviously 5-6 years of the life cycle, but within the next 3 years they'll already announce the next consoles or whatever the next technology is.
Okay, now that's a discussion we've had quite a bit in my streams. I've said, listen, I'm not seeing a lot of room here. You know, when I looked at the specs on what the PC you needed to make Spider-Man look that great on PC, I was like, oh my gosh, the PlayStation's not that strong, right? The PS5 is not that strong. So, you know, UE5 could squeeze a little bit more. The question then would be, what about everybody else? Everybody else using in-house engines, like Insomniac's using their in-house engine, Guerrilla, and games like Death Stranding and stuff are using the same engines. So it'd be interesting to see what they're able to do. And I people get so tired of me bringing this up, but as you guys were both talking, I just keep thinking of the Series S. It's like we have...
it's a catalyst, man. It's holding it back. It's holding the whole generation back. I think when Phil Spencer said that you could play Halo across all platforms, it was like, that's the dumbest thing ever, right? Because you only have to make it as good for the least common denominator, which is Xbox One.
Yep.
Right. And it's still running. So forget the S. The Xbox One is still holding some games back because they want to keep it on there.
Well, and we've gotten to that debate quite a bit because God of War Ragnarok was meant to land at the same time as like Starfield, and we just looked at the big Starfield update. It actually looked really good. I thought the dialogue persuasion system they outlined and showcased in that interview with Todd was dope. But I've continued to say that. I'm like, this game looks like they're really going to push the Series X to its limit. What's that poor S going to be able to do? You know, and what you guys were just talking about with the Unreal 5 engine and all these engines, if they're really going to want to squeeze as much as they can out of these systems, what's a developer going to feel when it looks at what it needs to do with the S? You're like, if you're trying to do everything you can to make these games look better, like what Ginger was saying, is like we're always wanting to see that thing pushed. Well, I don't know. I'm very curious in where the S fits into that situation, because for a while the Nintendo Switch was always the system what we considered was kind of like, there's no way that's going to land on there, which is generally true. If you look at a lot of the really good games that have launched in the last 3 or 4 years, they skipped the S. I mean, even Hogwarts still doesn't have a launch date on this Nintendo Switch because they're probably dealing with optimization, I would imagine. And they really want to launch on the Switch because it's Harry Potter and the Switch market saturation is incredible. But that the Switch is a very weak system.
I played Microsoft Flight Sim with my son on his S, and when you play it just on that, you're like, it's pretty good. It looks pretty good. But then when you go to the X and start playing Flight Sim, you're like, holy Christ, this is a huge difference. But then when you go on the PC, you're like, holy Christ, this is a huge, you know what I mean? It's like, you can't tell. It's like when you go to Best Buy and look at all the 4K TVs, and they're like, this one's this, and they show you the blur of the old TV. You're like, I didn't watch blurry TV. They have to optimize for that television. It looks better, but you can't compare unless you're sitting next to each other and going. If you're just playing a 720, you're like, wow, it looks good. But then you go to see a 1080, and you're like, oh no, that's crap. This is good. And you're like, oh, 2K, 4K, 8K. It's the same thing. If you're next to each other, you're going to notice a difference. But if you're just enjoying what it is, you're like, oh, this is pretty cool. That's it.
No, and that's one of the strengths actually as a part of marketing. And like I don't have hands-on experience with it, but from what I've heard from other devs, is that actually Unreal Engine 5 allows for more scalability across platforms. So that way you're not having to spend so much work trying to fit that square peg in that round hole. And so one of the strengths of that is that we talk about like cross-generation as a weakness. That could also be a weakness of systems and how game design structures and workflow actually go, to where, like, you know, if you're fine with running this game on your phone, well, there's your phone experience. Don't expect a PS5 experience, right? You know, like, but as long as essentially the phone then it comes into there is that design aspect from hardware that I bring up that we've seen with Ratchet and Clank in terms of like, oh, PS5 can load in assets so you can easily transition to a level like as in warping from one place to the other. I think that was something that was truly impressive. And it's interesting because like obviously Ratchet and Clank has value, but it isn't something like a Call of Duty. It isn't something that you're like, it's in, you know, like it isn't like the Fortnite where like, oh yeah, this is printing billions of dollars, but it's only printing billions of dollars here. Like it ends up being that gaming still is also still a lowest common denominator by the masses. Casuals make up the greatest majority, and the early adopters are the ones who pay more for that and usually don't benefit as much from that. But we need them. We need them running in through those lines, buying up those PS5s, you know, buying up those graphics cards. Maybe not.
I want to build a bridge to Mike's topic because I want to talk about Gotham, but on the subject of God of War and looking next gen, just today we watched another Dead Space gameplay reveal, and I'm getting a lot of flack because I was really looking forward to this remake, and I still am. I still think it's going to be fun to play. I think people that grew up playing this are going to be absolutely thrilled with it, but the more I've looked at it, the more I've been disappointed because I got more excited when I saw the $70 price point and that it was next gen only. And then when I watched the trailers and really looked with a critical eye, I saw all kinds of things that don't look and feel like a next gen remake. It feels like something that I could have run on a PS4. Now, obviously on the PS4 it would have probably run at 30 FPS, but I'm seeing graphical fidelity that doesn't seem like I'm getting $70 worth. Essentially what I said today is when you price something at 70 and say it's next gen only, you're putting it on the top shelf, and I expect top shelf performance and graphics. Where do you guys land on that? Because that is something I'm really going to bring up during the Gotham Knights discussion because I'm saying similar things about it. So as a transition to Gotham, in this Dead Space discussion, when you see $70, when you see remake, that's another aspect of this. It's a remake, and you see next gen only. I'm going to go to Mike first. Am I way out in left field in this? Am I being too picky, or is this, you know, where do you land on the expectation set by that price point in that category?
Yes, you're being picky. Good night. No, the I don't think you're being picky, but it's also like everyone's different, right? And right now, $70 price tag has just started, like a true $70, not the Call of Duty or whatever game that you pre-ordered for $120, right? Like just the game, regular $70 game. There's only been a few, right? So we know what a $60 game is and what we expect from a $60 game. So I'm asking, are you looking at a $70 and going, I want like 10% more better graphics? Like, what are you looking for that extra $10? Because we don't know what a $70 game is supposed to be yet, right? Like, for instance, like we can imagine what a $70, like Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out, that's a $70 game, right? Because Grand Theft Auto is just what we know from the past is going to be worth the $70 that they give us, right? We would hope, right? Cyberpunk was supposed to be that next game that we're like, holy Christ, that's what it was. But but if we're just talking console, $70, right? Because I can go buy the same game on PC for cheaper and have a better experience graphic wise. So on console, $70 game, what are you looking for? Like, what percent better for what? Gameplay, the systems, the graphics? Like, what are you looking at?
So I think there's a standard that other games have set right now. So right. I took issue with The Last of Us Part 1 being priced at 70 because I thought that's kind of weird. You have a remake at the same price as God of War Ragnarok. And then I played it and I said, I take that back because this game had the full weight of like a AAA studio thrown at it, and it feels like a brand new next-gen AAA title. The only thing that didn't feel next-gen was some of the movement. So I believe there's an industry standard. There's a bar that's kind of already been set. I look at Returnal, next-gen only title. I look at Ratchet and Clank, and then I look at The Last of Us Part 1. I would even include Horizon Forbidden West in there on PS5. And if you're falling below that, then you're not in the category. You're claiming you're in the category, but you're not, because these things I think are fairly observable just in gameplay trailers. So that's how I would frame it.
Okay, I mean I agree with you. Like I don't think Remake should be the full $70 price tag, right? And I'll bring up Miles Morales again, right? Miles Morales was, when it came out, they wanted to charge full price, but they said no, let's charge $50. But let's give them the other Spider-Man game on top of that. So you're getting 2 games and you're getting $70, right? And you're like, wow, that's definitely worth the $70, right? And that was the testing ground of what $70 gives you, right? Because if you're a first-time buyer on a PlayStation 5 and you bought Miles Morales for $70, you got Miles Morales and Spider-Man. And I believe, quote me if I'm wrong, chat, didn't you get the DLCs along with that, with Black Cat and all them inside that? There was like the whole bundle, wasn't it, of the first game plus Miles Morales? Or was it just the main game and Miles Morales?
I think so. Either is a steal, so I don't know, but either is a great deal.
Right. So if you're a brand new player on PlayStation 5 and you bought Spider-Man and you got Miles Morales and Spider-Man with the DLCs, that's a hell of a deal for $70. Then you look at Last of Us and you're like, that's a remake. Yeah, they did a lot of work to it and stuff, but is it worth $70? Then you're looking at the other games. Is Gotham? I want to play. I'm playing Gotham, but when I say it's $70, I'm like, ooh, $70. Is it worth $70? Like that hits me. I'm like, it's only $10 extra, right? It's 2 cups of coffee, as someone will say in chat. It's only 2 cups of coffee. If you can't afford 2 cups of coffee, you shouldn't be playing games, right? So I look at certain games. It all depends what it is. If it's an open world survival, if it's a single player action adventure, is it exclusive for one console and not the other? I don't know, man. It's all over the place as far as, is it worth $70? I don't think any remake should be $70. But then I also shouldn't have paid $80 in 1984 for Yara's Revenge, but that's what the price was, right? You know what I mean? So each their own. Like the graphics back then and all the stuff back then, if you want a game, that's what it cost. And if they're raising the price of the gaming, they're going to test the waters out, man. I mean, they're charging for remakes $70, and then they're bringing new games out for $70. Then they're bringing broken games that are not finished, and they're charging $70. And you have to wait, like Todd Howard says, it's not how you release, it's how it ends up or whatever, right? And so he's charging $70, and I don't know. It's just it's a different way. So I don't think you're being too picky. I don't. I think because you're a gamer, you're looking at what you get for your value of time. What's the stats as far as like, is it 4K? Does it run at 60 frames? Can it run at 120 frames? Is it ray tracing? All this stuff. Is it, if it makes the game run better and look better, then maybe it's worth $70. But if you're getting these hiccups and all these problems and it's looking the exact same or looking a little down, then no, it's not worth $70, and hence why you don't buy it day one.
For me, when I hear gamers complain about $70 and at the same time complain about free to play, I just don't care. Like, I'm just like grow up. Like, this is the price of entry. This is the cost, and you can wait. And generally speaking, if it's not Nintendo, that price will come down. And when it comes down to gaming, it has gotten cheaper and cheaper and cheaper over the last 20, 30 years, right? Like, for what you get, like, I don't know, like, I want to try and appreciate it. And as somebody who gets frustrated by the free to play model specifically, and how much money the free to play is, like, I'm just like, all right, like, games can't be free and they can't be paid for. What's the case argument, right? You know, like, PlayStation had to release $70 games so they could put the PS5 at a competitive price point with what Xbox was willing to lose per console. And that's why they did that. So they could make that up on the 30% game over game sale to help account for that. I don't care if it's 70. They should charge 100. Games should be 100 or 120, but they're not. they're coming at this price and they're hoping to get as much volume as it is. $70, considering that my eggs and I've been watering down my milk all summer, like I'm not buying the $70 game. That's another problem. You know, at some point you raise that price to what I said to 100, 120, and people just stop buying games altogether. You make less money. Yeah. But that's what Sony needed to do so that they could be competitive at a hardware level. And that doesn't mean that you need another feature. Like, I'm surprised that it took us this long to get to a $70 price point.
So when you see a game come into the market at a higher price point and also only next gen, does that modify your expectations at all? Because I don't have a problem with the $70 price point either. I've tried to educate people on the fact that, like, when I bought Nintendo cartridges for $60 or $70, I was spending the equivalent of $100 to $110. Yeah. Like, we're paying less. And then I said, compare Ocarina of Time to Breath of the Wild. Like, you spent more back then for a smaller game. Like, Breath of the Wild now is like 1,000 times the size of that game. So the question, though, for me is, when you look at the market, Ginger, and you're like, okay, this game's 70 next gen only, does that do anything to your expectations before seeing the game?
Now, how I approach my games, like if I'm going to spend $70 on a game or $60 or $120, because I've bought some $120 editions before, on the price that says I want to get at least 70 hours of fun out of this game. Not features, not like I would like it to have a solid locked in frame rate. Like, these are things that I would like, but I'm not going to sit here and say, like, the $10 extra didn't get me 120 frames. You know, like, if it does have 120, awesome. I like 120 frames, but I'm not sitting here like doing that. Obviously, if I have that choice, if you're going to say, Brian, you want to buy this game on PS4 for 60 or buy this game on PS5 for 70, and I have the choice, I'm going to take the PS5. I want to have the premiere experience. Mm-hmm. And so I would expect that at least to run on a PS5 at some level, right? So there would be the expectation that if the PS4 only does 30, but they say PS5 games are 60 frames, I would expect this to at least run at 60 frames, right? Like, hopefully I'm making sense there. Is that? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So that aspect I would expect, but I would also, in this case, if I'm purchasing that game, I would be expecting on myself to at least be playing it for. And usually what I kind of rack it up to is $1 per hour of fun. Did I have 70 hours of fun with this game? Now, that doesn't translate to every game. I've bought in games that are $20 and I've gotten thousands of hours of fun out of them. I've also bought in games that are $40 and maybe I only got 20 hours of fun. It's going, you're going to look at that. And that's usually more of a retrospective thought. Like, did I really enjoy that game? Because Sony's very story narrative driven. Maybe God of War or whatever $70 game is only going to be, or like, I'm thinking Mass Effect, but whatever. Maybe it's only a $20 experience. And if it's a remake as well, I shouldn't have any excuse. Like, it's my money, it's my choice. No one's forcing me to spend it. And I know that the price will drop.
Right. You could wait, right? That you could just wait. You don't have to buy game day one, week one, month one. You could wait to buy certain games. I look at it as for story. I'm a story guy. Like, the reason I'm buying Gotham Knights is because of the story, right? Not because of the looting, crafting system and everything in the game. It's just for the story. So still to this day, video games is the number one piece of entertainment, right? You could go pay $200 and get a crappy seat at a sporting event. It's a completely different piece of entertainment, but you're there for 2-3 hours. You're paying $200, thousands of dollars to sit there. You pay $10 to go to the movies for 2 hours. You're being entertained. Video games, in a story-driven that I play, if I go to a movie, I'm invested into that character and I want to be told the story and I'm just watching the story. With video games, I'm being told the story and I'm playing the character. So I am the character and I get to move throughout the world. And to me, that's amazing, always. And that's why I love really deep stories in no matter what game it is. If it's Gotham, if it's God of War, if it's Grand Theft Auto, if it's Red Dead Redemption, whatever it is, like, those stories to me are well worth $20, $30, $40, $60, $80, all depending on what type of game it is and how much enjoyment I got out of it. Enjoyment could be 8-hour title, but I absolutely loved it and I paid $60 for it. I'm like, man, I'm gonna play that again, or I'm gonna complete now the entire map, like an Assassin's Creed or something like that, to get my money's worth of time. The story might have been short, but now I can go back and 100% complete it or whatnot. So it changes and varies with each game, but I'm okay with the $70 price tag. The reality is I'm not going to be buying. I feel like a kid again. I'm not going to be buying 10 games, right, a year. I'm going to be buying 2 to 3 games again. Like when I first got my first wallet, or I had to ask my parents when I was a kid, I really want this game. At Christmas time, I would get like 2 games, and then my birthday would get like 2 games, and that was it, right? A game or 2. Now, as I got my own job and money when I was a teenager, I was buying them all left and right, and now I feel like I'm a kid again, where I'm like, because I got bills to pay and things to do, and I'm like, you know what? All right, I could buy 2 games at $70. I can buy a collector's edition for $100, right? It all depends on who you are and what you want.
Well, I wanted to use that to set the table for Gotham Knights because I was really looking forward to this title. I've played all of the Arkham games except for Origins, and I love them. If you guys haven't checked out 30's new channel that he launched, look for 30 NSG, 30 and Still Gaming, basically abbreviated. 30 NSG. He's got a bunch of Gotham videos that are crushing it for a channel with, I think, like 300 subscribers. So new effort, but crushing it on the view count on those vids. So make sure and support that channel. But this game is just in such a weird spot for me because I was really looking forward to it, and the more I've watched it, I don't see a step forward. Arkham Knight's a 7-year-old game, and where do you land on this one, Mike? Are you seeing some of the things that I'm seeing? Do you have concerns? I know you went really deep into Avengers, and even SkillUp said some of the looting in this reminded him of Avengers. So what's your flyover on this game with respect to quality? It is a $70 game. They very quietly just dropped old gen. It's a next gen only title, and it was
smart choice.
Yeah, they very quietly dropped it and didn't really say anything about it, but it is at a $70 price point. So what's your flyover on Gotham Knights?
I'm hoping that the dev build that the people got to play on was older and they didn't optimize it, and the graphics will look better. The water textures and stuff, and what SkillUp was showing. I mean, 7-year-old game. They did raise up the bar, and what I mean by what they did for Gotham, besides what Arkham was, Arkham series is one of my favorite comic book series of all time, and Spider-Man is up there as well because they took, the fighting basically mechanics from Batman and took it, and now these guys took it. It's a little floaty, it's a little different, but at the same time, Arkham didn't have co-op. Arkham didn't have 4 players to play, right? Arkham didn't have, supposedly, now this is them telling us, rich story with certain villain characters, like the backstory. Yeah, you played and you had story, but the only backstory you really got with most of the character was Joker, right? Because he was the main villain, and it was flushing out the story of Batman and Joker throughout the whole thing, and there was Scarecrow and whatnot. But they're giving you a richer story in this game, and we'll know if it's good or bad once it comes out. But they did raise the bar, right? They did raise the bar. They put a skill tree in the game. If it's good or bad, we don't know yet. But they didn't really have a skill tree in Batman series. They had his tech that you unlocked as you went through and had different things to get through the different puzzles and whatnot. So you got better gear. But there is better things. They did raise the bar, especially from their Origins game, because I'm not going to compare them to the Arkham series, but they did make Arkham Origins. And what they did with Arkham Origins, with the DLCs and whatnot, they basically included it all into this one game. Today, they just announced a 4-player co-op mode called Heroic Assault, okay? So I knew there was going to be a 4-player co-op in this game. I said it months ago, because in an article it slipped out. It said you could be 3 of the same characters, and I was like, how are you going to be 3 of the same characters if it's a 2-player co-op game? I was like, they let the cat out of the bag just by accident, but they did, right? And then another person in a video said that they got to play or they can play with 4 of their friends, and I was like, okay. So they took, and 4-player co-op was on Sony's site as well when you bought the game, and they took that down quietly as well. It said 4-player multiplayer, and they took that down. So it's not campaign co-op for 4 players, but it's a game mode for 4 players. So now I'm going into this game because I love rich story. I love DC. I love Marvel. I love that. I love Batman. I want to know, yeah, Batman's not in the game, or is he? We don't know, right? But I'm excited. That's what I'm excited about, right? The game visually, is it raising bars? No, it's not. It's dropping the bar, actually, at least for the footage that we saw. It doesn't look as good as the other games. The gameplay for combat Is it better? I don't think so. I think they kind of just went a bit under the other two games that I mentioned with the Batman Arkham series and Spider-Man. But then again, I haven't played it yet. I could maybe play and go, you know what? The combat feels really good because I played Marvel's Avengers and the combat puts a smile on my face. When I'm Hulk and I'm smashing things, it doesn't matter what's happening. I'm like, this is fun, right? Because I'm fantasizing that I'm the Hulk and I'm smashing things, right? So if I can feel like a really badass superhero in Gotham City, then they've won me over. Now, is it a generic city like Skill Up said? Yeah. You look at the other games and Gotham's a character itself, and in this one it looks like just a generic city of what it is. I am worried about the crafting system, right? They say to get certain gear in the game, you're finding chests, certain drops happen, and then you can craft items. And I'm like, what's this going to be? I don't know if it's going to be good or if it's going to be wedged in there. Now, I truly believe because Marvel's Avengers came out the way it did, they were making this game because this was supposed to launch in 2021, right? They delayed it a year to 2022. And I think in the process of them making this game, they saw Marvel's Avengers before it hit rock bottom. And they said, let's make a game like that, but in DC, right? 4-player co-op, kind of like a looter. And they took that looter, right, and changed it up where Marvel wedged the looter into Marvel. I think they had a looter from the start here and they took it out. They said, you know what? I don't think this is smart. And they pulled it out. Now, again, that's just my theory. I don't know if it's true, but it feels like they had a crafting system and a loot system in this game. And now they backtracked it to make it a full-fledged story, more story-driven than looter-driven. So we'll see what happens there. This 4-player co-op mode, Heroic Assault, is a 30 levels. Okay, it says here on the site, it says, yes, Gotham Knights can be played with your friends in two-player online cooperative mode, enjoyable solo or launch. Okay, you'll go through 30 floors total. You'll defeat enemies on each floor. So now this opens up a whole thing. This is not a live service game, no microtransactions. So is there going to be some sort of DLC that comes in where they insert new villains and new heroes and new, I don't know, your brain can go really far with, potential, and then you get disappointed. So I don't want to get too excited about it. But 30 floors is like Division 2, right? You got the tower type of thing. You got Marvel's Avengers had like a tower type of thing. Lots of games do this. Minecraft Dungeon does like a tower type of thing. So this is interesting. It's fun because you get to play with your friends co-op. So that's fun. Overall, though, my expectations for this game, because of Marvel's Avengers, I'm kind of bringing it down. I just want to play the story. If the story's good, I'm good with the game. If I don't ever play it again after I play the story and go into this 30-floor tower or play cooperative with other people in their game, I'm good. As long as the story's good for me, I think the game will be good. I think it'll average like an 8, like a 7.5, 8. I don't think it's gonna smash records or anything like that. But I do think if you're a DC fan, that this is your Hogwarts. You know what I mean? Like someone that's a Harry Potter fan is going to buy Hogwarts, and if someone that's a Batman DC fan, this is just another game that you can dive into and really enjoy the Gotham story.
What do you think of this game, Ginger? Because I've taken a lot of heat for this. That when they first revealed it, it looked so awesome. I thought, oh, it's gonna be awesome. Play as Batgirl or Nightwing or anybody else. They showed off, her and Robin, and it looked great. And I've been concerned because it kind of looks like it's degraded a little bit over time from that first trailer. And we're familiar with this. If everybody remembers the Watch Dogs trailer, like things kind of get stripped away. What's your opinion been on this game and how it appears to you if you look at the gameplay and stuff now?
It just seems like they're getting, especially when we're talking about anything Warner Brothers right now, with how everything's kind of going on within that company from a budgetary perspective. It could easily just be a game that it's like, okay, we can try to invest more money into it and get it done. And maybe their budget is completely separate from what we've seen as a part of like the HBO Max and all other Warner Brothers properties. Because if you all haven't seen, they've pushed movies out this year because they've only had so much money to release a couple of movies. Maybe there's absolutely no connection. Well, they're out of money, yeah. But that's why their money, they're hoping everything on Black Adam. But like when it comes down to it, it's like, well, if those things are intrinsically linked, I think it's just like, let's get it out. Yeah, we had bigger plans, but we've also been working on it. Let's get something out there. It's not a game that right now appeals to me. It's one of those things that when it comes down to it, I've got a lot of games I'm enjoying right now. And if y'all if I'm watching y'all's videos and you're like, wow, guys, like this is amazing. It's good. Combat is how I think it appeals. I don't care if graphic fidelity has been lessened. I do, and maybe I'm misremembering or not necessarily having all the pieces in line, but I do remember there was this game I was really excited for, done back up in the day, and it ended up, it was originally planned for like 4-player co-op, and it scaled back its its co-op capabilities, and they ended up in a litigation lawsuit, and they ended up losing. It was Silicon Knights. I forgot Beyond. Anyway, I forget the name of it, but it's like, yeah, I kind of get that vibe maybe, and to a degree, but I'm not gonna stress about it because like there's so many games on my hard drive right now that I don't even have time for. So it's just going to be one of those things that's going to pass me by unless it launches in such a way that people are like, yeah, why aren't you checking this game out? It's so much fun.
If anybody wants to know more about it, when I play it, I'm going to be playing it nonstop basically. So I'll know the ins and outs of the entire game when it launches.
Yeah, my chat knows. I'll play it day of, but you're not going to get a deep dive with me. If you want a deep dive, you're going to have to watch 30, because I'll move on quickly and get into other talk shows and stuff. I'll showcase it day of. I may play it that night with my wife because I'm going to get it on PS5, because the co-op is the one area that I think, oh, I'll play this with my wife and we might have some fun. My main concern has been character movement and character animations. It looks like a mobile game to me. Like if you look at Marvel Future Revolution and then you look at this game, there's so many similarities. It's like, was this game originally planned for mobile? There's new information coming out that makes me very worried that is exactly what happened. There's a Reddit where a guy is saying it's locked at 30 FPS, which doesn't make any sense. None of the previews said anything about that. SkillUp, I feel like SkillUp would have said something about that.
I don't know if it's locked because it's on at least on the Xbox store. It does say the what's the term they use, like technical whatever, and if it says that it's the 4K ray tracing, and it says, now obviously I don't know if the game can do it, but it says games can go up to 120 frames per second if it's upscaled or not upscaled, made for the Xbox Series X and stuff like that. So I don't know if it's 30 frames. It might run 60 frames, but I don't know if it'll run 4K ray tracing 60 frames. It might run 4K at 30 frames and maybe 1080p at 60 frames. I don't know. We don't know the exact text. They haven't released it. They did say though that what the gig size is and what graphics cards you need for the PC. But yeah, I haven't heard as far as the actual official can it run at 30 frames or 60 frames yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the comment here says, the guy says the PS4 version does not have any graphical options other than brightness, contrast, saturation, and HDR. I can confirm it doesn't run at 30 FPS. I had to download a 15 gig patch when installing. That doesn't mean there won't be another patch before release. So there might be, the concern I would have is it's just 4K 30 out of the box and you can't turn that off or whatever. That would be a weird choice, but that would be a concern for me. I can't do that. Like the 30, so many games do 4K 30, like Ratchet and others, and I always go to performance. Like 1440 60 for me is the sweet spot. I think games look perfect right there. So we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
I'm also worried because one of the devs said that there's an end game, and I was like, oh God, like Marvel said there was an end game, and here we are 2 years later still waiting for the third thing to put in the end game that was supposed to be in the game at like 1 month after launch. So I don't know what end game is or what they decide, because again, if there's a looter aspect to this, they haven't shown any of that off. They're trying to be really quiet about like letting people be surprised. So I hope they have good intentions and a good, I hate to say the word roadmap. I don't want to see roadmap. I don't want to see the roadmap. I'm saying internally. Hopefully they have a good roadmap down the line.
That's a risk. That's a risk.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Like
I'm excited. It can't be worse than Marvel's Avengers. I have 1,000 hours in that game, and there's a lot of problems with that game. I'm like, there's no way they can make it as bad as this, because they had to learn the lesson from these guys, right? You would have to go, we don't want to make
That's a mistake. A lot of gamers, I hear that, they're like, oh, clearly you like, no, it's like,
you're like, we want to make a game like this. We don't want to make a game like that.
Yeah. The man, Avengers, dude.
Isn't that stubborn though? Come on, Ginger. Like if you're like, I want to make a game like said game. you're a developer, you start making that game, don't you strive to make that game better than the game that you wanted to make it like?
That's what the gamer thinks, but not necessarily how it ends up falling out. Like, no, like that's the thing. Like, within similar categories, it's like, now bad leadership is, I think, it's a critical component of that. We see it happen multiple times where they're like, you're not like, no, we don't want to be compared to this game. No. And so then they cut off everything and they don't go learn lessons. I think when you do that, it is important to dive into that game and find out what worked well and what didn't, because gamers are naturally going to make that comparison. But that's a driven by leadership. It does not mean just because you want to make a game like X game doesn't mean that the publisher wants any kind of comparison to that. And it's a weird world, man. Like I've seen some things where you're just like, well, why would you do that? Like Anthem is a great example.
Well,
Anthem is such a great example.
They didn't know what they were making, to be honest. So,
well, and yeah, that's a problem with leadership. But then B, it's like, oh yeah, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, they don't go see what their competition is even doing, because gamers, like, even if that, yeah, I wish more developers did that aspect. But I wonder if there's some kind of legal concern. I'm wondering if that you end up having some kind of nervous publishers like, we don't want to get sued because, like, what if they, we copy them, or something like that. Like, well, I know we talk a lot. I deal a lot with that in the comedy clubs. A lot of us comedians are like sitting down and talking about it, like either like worried about listening and going and watching specials for the risk of accidentally putting out a joke that's there.
It feels though that these companies are like, all right, plan one, grab a cool IP. Group two, okay, let's make it a looter, and let's make it like that crappy looter game over there because they made a lot of money. It's like, no, don't take the bad parts of this game, take the good parts, right? Like, for instance, if there is a looting aspect in this game that we really don't know yet, don't make it like Avengers or Destiny or anything else. Make it like Division. Like, take the good part of Division 2 and go, yeah, let's take that part and put it in this game. They're like, no, we're going to make a crappy game and we're going to put it out there. $70. Here we go.
Best intentions could be there, and then at the end of the day, sometimes it's like, well, we gotta release it, So I wish you luck. Hopefully you have fun, and if you do, I'll jump in, for sure.
I mean, I can have fun with a stick and a hoop, so I'm pretty sure I'll be okay with Gotham Knights.
That's why you're still, that's why you're 30 and still gaming.
Right.
All you need is a ball and a cup. Yeah, that's all you need. I hope it's great. If I can stomach the combat, like I said, I could see myself playing co-op with my wife. We've been wanting something fun just to kind of play, because I was enjoying playing Returnal with her, but that gets really intense. Like that's like not a chill game to play in the evenings. Returnal gets kind of wild because it's a rogue, so it's like all on the line when you get to bosses and stuff. Well, we like to cover a variety of games here, so when you guys tune into this, you may have tuned in and saw like God of War Ragnarok news. You may have seen the thumbnail. That's at the beginning of the episode. That's the central story we started with. Mike was obviously, as one of the hosts of the show, wanting to talk about Gotham, really, really excited, to dive deep into it. And Ginger is one of the regular updaters of us on Final Fantasy, but also New World. Yes. And this game just continues to say, we're not done yet. We got
like
stuff.
Rocky Balboa. It's like Rocky Balboa. It doesn't want to go down yet. It doesn't want to go down.
That's right. It doesn't want to be thought of as a bum. And I've always wanted games like this to figure it out, because even if I don't come back and play, it's a great model and archetype for other games to say, oh, look what they did. Look how they kind of duked it out, slugged it out. I think there's a great looter somewhere being created, and they're going to learn a lot from Destiny. Sadly, it's not going to be the first Descendant from everything we're hearing, but I believe there's a good looter shooter being created that is just patiently building and watching and taking copious notes from The Division and Destiny. And there'll be MMOs that likely take notes and learn from New World. So what do we got, Ginger? What's going on? Please don't tell me I'm going to have to come play an instrument and music again. We need more than that. That sounded cool, but I want a little bit more than that this time.
So what's going on right now with the game is they're preparing to launch kind of their big fall update. The concerns I have is because it's getting a new zone, new weapon. Like, there's a lot of content. A lot of people have been labeling this an expansion, and I've been fighting against that label, namely because like it's the fall update. Like, as a part of MMOs Go, you end up having, whatever kind of, timeline you have updates. I don't consider any update to Fortnite an expansion, for example, even though they might change the map, etc. But my only concern there is that gamers end up having a, like, oh, I expected it to be multiple zones and multiple weapons, and it's like, yeah, like maybe that's a conversation for another day, what constitutes that term. But overall, their big update scheduled for October the 18th is redefining the new player experience up through level 25. So 1 to 25, cutscenes, story, the voice acting is incredible. Like, it should be something more akin to what MMOs for a lot of players are more accustomed to, something like on Final Fantasy or World of Warcraft, for example. Now, after 25, they said that they're going to redo that as well, but that's not happening on Tuesday. You're also getting a brand new zone, new greatsword weapon, like new dungeon, and a lot of stuff is being reworked. In fact, honestly, I feel like the PTR that I've been playing on runs the game better. Like, I feel like they got the game running in a good state, but it feels like even performance-wise, the game just is the UI just feels way more snappy. So I do appreciate that overall. At its core, following up that the Tuesday update, on the 2nd of November, they're opening up new fresh start servers for those who want that brand new experience where players can't transfer in. Everybody's starting fresh, and they're going to have at least one fresh start server per region with the inability to have people transfer in for, they were currently saying like 6 months. We'll see if that holds out. I'm not a fresh start like server, but I understand those who are wanting that brand new experience, that seasonal maybe experience, where everybody's starting off on square one and then kind of running for the world and trying to take over with that for those who are interested in it. I think essentially following next week, we probably will get a new roadmap, or at least a new dev update talking about the future roadmap, because their current roadmap goes into the fall. And I think they're seeing a lot of numbers. We're seeing lots of players return, a lot of player satisfaction overall. And I think that's ultimately going to be a good thing. But we're all just wondering. So one of the questions that New World players are actively asking is that, oh yeah, thank you very much, chat. There's also a Halloween event, and it's fantastic. Like, it's very exciting to see them bring in these different seasonal events. And so the Halloween event will also be taking starting off. Thank you, John, for I did the Halloween event on PTR and I haven't touched it since. I completely forgot about it. So the question is that do they go with a kind of an expansion model at some point in the future, or are they going to just no man's sky this thing where the best marketing, the best advertising is that they just show up and they just bring out really, really cool stuff? So the game is already, from my perspective, in a really good position. The game is continually improving, and Amazon is communicating, which is, I think, is a key component in service-based games. So I feel like we've gotten year one under the belt, and you kind of have growing pains, in my opinion, from an MMO for at least 2 to 3 years. So I think we're starting to see kind of them mature as a team to understand the content. One of the things that in the last dev update that they spoke about is that they want to stop taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So one of the common critiques is that, like, you might have a big update, but then you still have new problems that kind of emerge each and every time. So the community ultimately has been encouraging them to slow down and stop making like updates every month. And I think we'll end up seeing them kind of shift into kind of a big update every 3 months, which I think ultimately would be exciting. And any kind of fixes that, any kind of adjustments or bugs or fixes they can make in the interim kind of get patched in every week or every other week or something like that. But right now, feels like for me, I haven't played at all this week, namely because I know that next week it's going to be pretty exciting to actually take my character into the new zone, to experience the new stories, to get into the new dungeons. And so this has been kind of a nice relaxing week. Plus I've also been pretty busy, but I think next week's going to be pretty exciting. And I think what I hope for as a player is that we start to have the conversation about what comes after this, because after this update, we really don't know what's next. And that's going to be, I think, something that's either going to be the thing that drives New World player numbers continually up, or it's going to be the thing that puts the nail in the coffin if they're like, yep, we're done. But it doesn't sound like, from every conversation that I've had, that's actually kind of the plan forward. But some of the things that I know that you've addressed with Lono, what you want to see with them redefining and bringing things in game and teaching, that's getting better. Is this the perfect time for you to return to it? I think only if you really miss it. If you really miss it and you were like, oh, I really want to see it and experience it, on the 18th, it's going to be a great opportunity for people to come and check out the new player experience. Doesn't mean you have to stick around. if after the new player experience, after level 25, you can even do this on a veteran character, by the way. It's not like you have to make a new character. And after that, you're like, cool, I want more. Let me know when that happens. Then, then it's just a function of time. So I'd highly encourage anybody who has not been playing the game for a while to log in. Right now, up to the 18th, they have a 50% additional experience in case you never hit cap. And the last thing I would say is that servers are getting really filled and they're having to turn on more and more servers, and they've been doing that pretty much each and every week. So I don't know where you ended up, but you might want to log in and maybe use a free transfer token to find if you and your friends are considering checking it out. I would do that now rather than Tuesday, because Tuesday probably will have a queue. They have said they're working to make it to where you can transfer before you log in. But that's not going to be on Tuesday, and that's going to be an unfortunate thing. I do wonder if we'll see articles and videos about people frustrated that they have a big queue and they just want to switch servers. So if anybody can do that before Tuesday, now's your opportunity.
For context here too, I'm checking the Steam charts and I'm like, well, there you go. I mean, they have doubled their average players. So if you want to see it as like a valley, they got way down in a valley in June. 13,000 would be the average players, and it's bounced up 16,000, 25,000, 28,000 average players. There's 37,000 people playing right now. And if you see it as a valley, it's like they're kind of coming out of the valley. They're heading back towards the numbers that they had in February was 32,000. In January, 65,000. December, 83. So if they can get up to those numbers and start averaging anywhere from 80 to 100,000 players on the average player login, that will be impressive. Like to turn that around. And this fall could be that. The question is always, how do you come back? That's the thing. I'm going to come back and go through the whiplash of, where am I? I don't know where I am. What's my server? What's going on? You did say, replayer or returning player acquisition was something they thought about with like basically a tutorial-esque experience. They did consider that. Mike, how do you come back to a game like this if it's going to feel like you want to praise them? Oh, it's a completely different game. But I went through that with No Man's Sky. I was like, oh, it's a completely different game. And I kind of wanted to start over because it was like, I don't know what I'm doing or where I am or what's my ship's like, like where do you land on as a potential returning player? I'm thinking, how on earth could I do it? You're muted, Mike.
Sorry, my son came in. I was telling Ginger earlier before the show started that I went back and I just couldn't do it. And the reason is that I liked all the updates that they did, right? 100%. I like the 0 to 25, that grind where it feels much, much better. The story, the dialogue between all the characters. I love the voice dialogues with all the characters. I like the new weapons. I thought the musical instrument was actually pretty fun because I used to play Star Wars Galaxies and they used to have musical instruments there. So it brought back a little nostalgia feel of that. But then I was just like, oh, the dungeons. The dungeons was another thing. I didn't have to get any keys anymore, right? So that was great as well. And I was like, wow, it feels good. As I'm playing it, I was like, this feels good. But then I was like, yeah, it's too late. It's too late. And it's nothing against the devs, right? It's just now there's other games coming out, and I'm putting more time in there. And no matter how much you love a game or multiple games, you have the same amount of time every single day to do stuff. And it's just really hard to get back into it. I like it's funny. I love New World. I love everything about New World, but I don't want to play New World, right? Yeah. It makes
nothing wrong with that at all. Like,
no sense. It makes no sense because it's done everything from when it launched. I like the crafting system, which they fixed. I like the inventory system, which they fixed. They fixed everything that was like bad, but it was good when you first played it. And then you're like, it's starting to see the cracks. They fixed all the cracks, right? They fixed all the cracks. It's a much, much better gaming experience now. It feels better. It looks better. They changed the cities. And now they have the expansion. I think a lot of people are coming back for the new area more than the quality of life updates, right? And I don't know if they can, as much as Ginger likes it and other people like it, I don't think it'll ever go back up to those numbers like we see with like Cyberpunk right now. Like Cyberpunk made a completely U-turn and now there's, higher than it was when they launched, okay? I'm not saying that New World can't do that, but I think New World's going to have these big dips and valleys where game, just like any game, but it's an MMO, and MMOs live and die by the population of the player base in those servers, right? If they're dead servers, they have to start consolidating. People's experiences depend on other people playing in that world for the economy and everything else. It's different than a live service game where a Call of Duty where your servers are dry because it'll just merge you into another server. But if you put your life into a server and then that server dies, you kind of feel like the air is sucked out of the room, right? And then you have to restart and do it again. And that's the thing. No Man's Sky, like a Skyrim, a Fallout, any kind of these open world games, every time you stop for a long period of time and then come back, you are exactly what you said, Lon. You're lost. You're like, what was I doing? What am I doing? Should I start again? And then you're kind of in this like same repetition again. You start a new character, you do up the whole thing. You're like, I really love this. And then something happens. Life happens, a new game comes out, and you lose track again. And you come back 6 months later, you're like, should I start again? Or do I invest more time into it? So I don't know. I do really like New World. I hope New World does succeed, and I hope I get to come back when there's another lull happening. But right now, there's other games taking my time, and my time is very limited and valuable when I play games. So
that's actually the most important point. And then one of the things that I think makes New World special in that regards is that being that you don't have a subscription in this game, you can choose to dip in and dip out whenever you want. And that's, I think, healthy for gamers. One of the things we've seen, I think, as an unhealthy practice is this is all I play all the time, never playing anything else. And then eventually that's going to lead to a point where you have to like cut and bail. Like, it's like I have to go cold turkey, as opposed to like, yeah, I played it a little bit, this last week. That was really enjoyable, and dipping in and out. Community also helps drive a lot of that. Like, we end up running our community game nights, which is fun. So it's like, we'll get together and go do dungeons, or we'll just go chop down trees. I don't care. Like, we're going to go figure out some kind of way to enjoy our time in the world. But the numbers thing I want to kind of talk about, and then I want Lona to kind of weigh in as well. I think one of the things is that we should, if we could cut out hype, right? Like, what really is the number? Because a lot of people look at the hype number and they say, like, will New World ever get to that? It doesn't need to. I don't care for it to. I don't think it will, unless all of a sudden you just see them crushing it in terms of both marketing and console, or something like that. But regardless, I really think the number, what I always kind of define the number is two phases. I look at February and January as what I would call the kind of the true number of people who are really interested in this game, because that's essentially like when the content is, when you hit 60, when you're looking at the core content and what the game is offering outside of big updates, outside of hype, you're looking at around 67,000 to 117,000. We're not there yet. I think we might see that, but we'll still see it in a hype way. The true, like, I think that's a really good number, especially for an MMO that's just on Steam. And that would actually put it in easily in the top 10, because right now it's in the top 25, top 20 games played on Steam overall. Like, its numbers 37,000. Like, that's still top 25, easy on Steam. But I say 60 to 100,000. That would be an incredible number. That's what I would call a real number for the game. The floor, though, the red flags for me, the things that I would say would be concerning to see, because their floor is 13,298 concurrent. If they ever get to a point where it drops below that floor, because I believe MMOs, in terms of it, is that you're looking at ceilings and floors, right? Like highs and lows.
Yep.
Right now, we know they're low. We know it. It's set. It's on this website. If they drop below that low, there's a real problem. That's where you'll hear my tone and concern for the game change. But I believe what we'll see is that floor raise and raise and raise and raise, as long as they do the work. And that's what they're doing. And so that's how I look at MMOs. And that's where I think where people get frustrated with my analysis. But then, 6 months later, I get to make the I told you so video, like, because I look at certain things differently. I don't care about the concurrent. I care about the highs and the lows. And if the low is constantly going up, that's a good sign. That's a healthy sign.
Yeah, but I guess the servers, though, right? Like, if when you go into a server and when the game's popping off, man, it feels good. Like, back in the day, World of Warcraft and stuff like that, when you went into a city, you're like, oh man, there's a lot of people in this game, right? It feels healthy, it feels good, the trading and everything like that.
Yeah.
When you go into a city and it's desolate, and you're like, I'm having fun, but somebody else playing? Maybe I'm off on off hours. I'll come back later. And you come back later and it's still dead. You're like, well, no one's playing. And just life in general, that's just what it is. I know a lot of people are introverts and stuff, but when you go out somewhere, people go towards crowds because they want to see what's there. And if there's no one there, they're like, well, nothing's happening here, right? Myself, I don't care if I go to a crappy bar. As long as I'm with the people having fun, that's where I'll be. But that's what gaming culture is. Gaming in MMOs, if you go into a place and it doesn't feel like people are enjoying themselves and being there, you're like, nah, let's go fun. It's like high school party jumping. You know what I mean? You're like, this party's lame. Let's go to a different one, right? That's what it feels like when a game, even though it's not dead, even though what you're talking about, that low, there's 100 servers, but 30 of those servers are completely dead. Those people think their game is dead, and they're like, and they don't want to invest by moving or transferring their token to another server because they have to invest time back into that, and that time sink is what pulls people away.
Yeah, I mean, maybe your experience is different, but we haven't actually seen that happen because essentially they've like when everything was getting small, they moved you. So you're on a new server, like everything gets, merged. Right now, they're actually having the opposite problem is that servers are filled and people are in long queues. So they're spinning up new servers. That's where the fresh start servers will come into play. Ultimately, the fix is what Guild Wars 2 does, where they basically say you're all a part of this game and we're going to feed you into the zones. But I don't know if we'll ever see them go in that direction because Lono even addressed this earlier on. It's like just adding more people, you got resources that, and things like that, mob spawns, like there's all these things that you have to consider. And he did an excellent video on that this time last year. But at its core, those are things we will see when hype. That's what I'm saying. Like when the hype of Brimstone Sands and the new Fresh Start servers dips down, what's our new floor set at?
Right.
And then essentially it's like, okay, cool, because servers are a problem and the devs have addressed that they're working on those solutions and they know that they need to fix and figure these things out. And then, unfortunately, it isn't a light switch. It wasn't like, oh, easily, turn off all problems. Boom, but we'll have to wait and see. And so once the hype of the Brimstone Sands dips down, you're going to see people with the hype. We're already seeing it online. Everybody's like praising New World. And as soon as it, like the algorithm kind of shifts on it, what I'm looking for is that what's our new floor? Is it 20,000? Is it 16,000? Like these aren't bad numbers because we know that hype cycles exist and we know how it impacts us as gamers. Like you said, we want to be where the crowd's at. We want to be where people are. And that's one of the things that drives hype in. And so somebody might be just coming in, checking out all the changes, being like, oh, now I want to go play God of War. Nothing wrong. Like there's nothing wrong with that. That's a healthy thing to do as a gamer.
Yeah, I think that's always the tension is you either are a victim of failure and the bottom falls out or you're a victim of success and everything kind of caves in. I know when the game came out, that was the issue. And so I do wonder if that is the risk now. The greater risk is not them failing. The greater risk is being a victim of success. Like what if all these people come storming back and they can't manage it? Well, then that could potentially make it all for naught. It's like all that work, all that effort, making the game better, and everybody comes surging back, and they're like, I can't play, I can't get in, I can't play with my friends. Whatever those problems could be, that's not even indicative of the game's quality at that point. That's just, oh my gosh, how do you handle all these people coming surging back in? Because this is one of those games that I cheer for from the sidelines. It's like, come on, man, you guys can do this. You have a good game. You have such good core design and sound. And one of the people that is actually at the studio working on the game is in our community. He's a super nice guy. He's very, very generous. He's always given good input on what's coming. And it's like, man, I'd love to see, New World pull itself up and really, really deliver greatness, because it seems like a game that deserves it based on the merits of some of its individual pieces. Maybe not how it was handled when it first came out, but it's weird to say that, right? It's like, it's one of those games where you're like, man, this is a game that deserves to succeed. This is a game that deserves a shot. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons people rooted for No Man's Sky, because you could almost sense there's something here beneath the surface. There's something great that could exist. I've cheered for games in the past like that and said things as though, there's like this giant skeleton underneath the surface, man. There's something amazing that could be here if you could just figure it out.
Absolutely.
So
time will tell.
What's that?
Time will tell. Like
time
that's
will
really
tell.
the factor.
Yeah, time will tell. We are going to move on to the members only segment, the after show. Ginger has typically got to part ways with us when that happens. But I'm going to give these guys an opportunity to talk about where you can find them, what kind of content they make. Maybe you've never heard of them before. Maybe this is your first Reforge Roundtable, and you're like, well, I don't know who Ginger and Mike are. Well, they're going to tell you. So, Ginger, what are the places they can find you, and what kind of content are you making?
I generally focus in on like looter shooter multiplayer RPGs, MMORPGs. You can start at Ginger Prime. That's where I play, and I stream there occasionally. If I'm going to stream off Twitch, it's going to be on Ginger Prime. You can also find me on Twitch. I run a Twitch channel with my friend Chris at Work to Game. That's Work 2, the number, and then the word game. But overall, if you start in Ginger Prime, all the links are everywhere you need to be. I covered New World with Ginger World. I cover Final Fantasy and Ginger XIV. I have Ginger Blue Protocol. So for Blue Protocol, if that game ever decides to resurface, I'm really excited. And I am a member. The reason why I have to dip is I got to go get my kids their haircuts, and then I got some work stuff that I need to get done. So I have actually been a member for 14 months. I said that's what I got to put my membership badge in chat earlier today, which was nice.
Yeah, I saw that, and I didn't want to shout it out at the beginning of the broadcast. Like, thanks for the membership, Ginger.
Thanks. Oh, you're so welcome. I've been a fan of Lona, like especially like Anthem and Destiny coverage, and his continued growth over here on YouTube. So I'm actually just happy that I get to come hang out and talk games, and we can finally disagree on a few things. That always makes fun. Fun podcast for sure. And no, it's not haircuts every Friday, John. Generally speaking, though, like usually my family, my wife needs me, and then I usually start my community game nights at 4:00. So that's it. Just is a timing thing for me, unfortunately. But yeah, that's where you can find me. Start at Ginger Prime. If you guys like that, check it out. And other than that, you'll see me here on occasion.
Yeah, Mike, where can they find you? And I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but let's frame that channel. I'm seeing these videos pull viewership, man. It's cool to see.
Yeah, tell me about it, because my normal channel, 30 and Still Gaming, which is my old channel, and my new channel is 30 NSG, but it will be 30 and Still Gaming. But right now it's 30 NSG. We're moving channels. We're moving sort of like what you did. The algorithm has completely and utterly destroyed my other system, channel because of how old it is. So I moved over, did the exact same content that I'm doing, and then I'm doing extra content on top of that. I'm making videos right now for Gotham Knights. So if you're interested in that game, you come on over. But I cover all types of things. I do a show called The Daily Grind Monday through Thursday in the mornings from 10 o'clock to noon. It covers news stories. I do about 3 stories. And then I do 30 plays, which is in the evenings, Monday through Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. We play different games. Right now I'm playing Grounded, absolutely loving Grounded. And then Thursday night, I do a podcast called Generation X Gaming, a weekly podcast that goes over a few of the top stories from the past week, and we rant along the way. So that's what I do Monday through Thursday. And the new channel is going to have all of that. But right now, 30 NSG, if you guys wouldn't mind, hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to get it monetized, so I'm trying to get to that 1,000 sub mark. We're doing really good on the viewership, though. The viewership is skyrocketing over there, so I'm very happy to see that.
That's how it starts. That's when the algorithm starts to treat you right. You just gotta push. It's really, really difficult, but that channel change can be all the difference in the world. Guys, listen, we're going to do a redirect for members to go to the after show. Everybody else should go sub to his channel, okay? If you're a member, I'll send you there after, okay? We're going to go do after show with Mike, and when we're done, I'll send you over there, okay? But everybody else, if you're not a member, if you're lurking, listening, and you just haven't gotten one of those gifted memberships and you want to go support Mike's channel, I'm going to put the link in chat. So that link right there is a link to his brand new channel. Go get him monetized. 1,000 subs that's something we can definitely lend a helping hand with, because that really makes another difference as well. Once videos are monetized, YouTube likes them a lot more. So head over there. If you're a member, don't go anywhere. I'm going to start the next stream and bring you with us, okay? I'm going to give you a link to the members only stream as well, just in case, because that I know sometimes it doesn't want to work, okay? So that other link is
redirect is spotty sometimes.
Yeah. Hey,
YouTube.
Thanks so much for clicking on this. If you're a member, this is an after show. Ginger's going to step out, but we're going to stick around a little bit after the Reforge Roundtable. So if you're getting to watch this, maybe you got gifted as a member. Maybe you're your own member. Maybe you're a magician and somehow you got in here and we don't know how you did that. But make sure you're in the Discord. There's links in the descriptions of all my videos to the Discord server. And make sure you're around on Friday nights Madam and I will be playing some scary games tonight for October. We're going to finish that Dark Anthology series. So I'm going to end the previous stream. I'm going to end the roundtable and bring everybody over. That was a great episode. Thanks so much, Ginger, for being here, and so much for the great conversations, disagreements, and